All right, good afternoon, everybody. This is our second to the last meeting. I'm glad that you're here. I was a little bit nervous. Most of you came in just on time or slightly late, which made me think, man, I'm going to be presenting a lot of topics today on subjects I haven't prepared for. So all of our presenters are here. We are talking about the application lifecycle type items today. So we've got 5 presentations to go through. We're going to have to run through them, probably faster than what we should, but I have in our spreadsheet posted links for all of the topics that we're hitting today, so you at least have a steady resource to go, as well as what you're going to learn from the presentations today. So I am going to be quiet. I'm going to stop sharing, and Taylor, you are our first one up, so take it away.
All right. 1 second here. Oops. I hate when the little toolbar gets underneath the Mac toolbar, and so now I can't switch to PowerPoint because I can't get to my. All right, here we go. Okay, so I had. Let's go back. So I had the application lifecycle. So mine will be fairly short here. So just what is, you'll notice a lot of places that I saw, Salesforce likes to refer to it as ALM everywhere, which just stands for Application Lifecycle Management. So we'll do, what is it? Show a little diagram that I think is extremely helpful, and then just some why you should follow that type of process. So what is application lifecycle management? It's a process to run your development and releases on. It helps you maintain organization and outline how you oversee updates and track changes as they move from planning stage into releases and then into retirement potentially. So here is a really helpful diagram that I found that kind of walks through all of the different phases that you go through in application management. So the first one that you start in is the plan release. So you need to come up with your requirements and your design and your process and plan for what's going to be in this release as a first step. Then the next step is to go through and actually develop what is supposed to be in that release. And you may have a bunch of different developers that are working on a bunch of different parts of that one release. So they're independently working on their different parts of it. And then once development is complete, then they go into the testing phase. And this is the individual developers testing each of their components and making sure that their components are working how they expect them to work. Then the next phase is to actually combine all of those different changes that have happened and actually build the release. So it's combining everything all into the one release that you're going to then send out to the testing of everything all together. So once you have the release built, you then send it out to testing, whether that be UAT or some other type of testing that you may have to test all of these different changes as a whole to make sure that they all talk together and everything is working properly. And then you go out and you release it to production, and then you follow that same process again. It's just a circle. Once you get through your one release, then you plan the next release, and you just kind of continue throughout that life cycle for all the releases that you go through. Now, some of the keys as to why you should kind of follow this process is that, you know, some people may think adding in another process is going to slow down your development time and your time to production is going to slow down drastically. but actually it helps you because you find errors early, and it helps you get to production faster. You know, if you just had developers randomly doing things and then pushing them out independently, you don't necessarily, you're not going to find some of these errors that you would if you actually just incorporate things into one release and then you push it out. And you also have the stage after developers finish their development work that they actually test their own pieces. The other thing that it helps you is just helps you build smoothly, and you follow a process. So you track all changes and you have this really well laid out process that helps you get things out to production with minimal impact to any of your production systems, because everyone is on the same process and you don't have people doing things in left field and right field, especially if you have some things that, you know, they may be working towards things that are going into the same production system, but they're on different teams that, you know, one person's working on something that doesn't actually isn't actually related to the other person's changes, but they may have impacts in those changes due to, you know, nomenclature or other, you know, shared objects that they may use. That is all that I had for the lifecycle management stuff. On this slide in the actual deck, there's a lot of, you know, extensive notes on what all of these mean in more long sentence terms, but I don't know if there's anything else. Any questions that anyone had?
So why would an admin, if you're a solo admin, find this relevant? Any thoughts on that? That's for the group as well, so you don't have to feel like you have to answer it, but yeah.
I mean,
Go ahead, sorry.
If you make an app.
Okay. Yep. That would be true. You should do that definitely in a sandbox environment. Because a lot of times, and I'm guilty of this as well, and I have to be very careful. It's so easy to make those changes in production, and it's just not good practice, because you know, and unless you're absolutely amazing, we all make mistakes, and if we aren't doing that, we aren't testing those things out in our sandbox before we do these releases, we're just kind of buying time before we're going to get ourselves in trouble. So it's always good idea, even if you are a solo admin, to build out your changes in that sandbox environment first.
It's also great to have your deployment plan and any documentation around that, because then if you do run into a bug, even if you've tested in Sandbox, if you run into a production bug, you have everything documented. You can go back to it. You know, as a solo admin, you work on a lot of different things and you can forget what you did 6 months ago. So it's great to have that documentation as well.
It's good to be able to communicate it out to your end users so that they know what's happening.
Yeah.
Did I steal what you were going to say, Carla?
No, I just said and yesterday. She said 6 months ago, but
oh, right. Yeah, that's true.
I forgot what I did yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's true. It's absolutely true. All right. Any other questions on the application lifecycle? Thoughts? If not, go ahead and stop sharing. And Karthik, you are up next to talk about sandboxes. Are you with us, Karthik? You're still muted. There you are. Good.
Yes. Hey guys. So there's a lot of resources on web on sandboxes. So I think a lot of you might know, but I did not create slides. So I like this tutorial card already placed. So I just want to go with it. Consider this as like a refreshment, suppose if you're not sure. So we do have Salesforce provide 4 different types of sandboxes. full, partial data, developer, and developer pro. I don't know whether you guys can see this chart. Whenever we create this table, whenever we try to create a sandbox, this is the table we see. Hey, what sandbox you would like to create?
Do you want to share your screen?
I'm so sorry. I thought I'm sharing my screen.
We love looking at your face, but it probably doesn't reflect the table that you're showing. So
one second.
no problem. That share button should be at the bottom of the page there.
Yep.
Perfect.
Can you guys see?
Yeah, that looks great.
So I did not create my slides. I like this article, which will give high-level details of what Sandbox and Salesforce are, different types of sandboxes. So whenever we can only create sandboxes from the Salesforce production, we cannot create sandbox from the sandbox. So when we try to create, it will give us these 4 options based on our Salesforce license structure. Based on our Salesforce license, it will show which sandbox license are applicable for us. And if not applicable, it will say no template exists for this organization. If you see in the partial data. So whatever applicable, we'll see it. So as I said a little before, we have 4 different types: full, partial, developer sandbox, and developer pro. The name full resembles, it's a clone, or you can say like a staging environment. Some organization use like a production staging, exact replica of production. So say it has a 29-day interval of refresh, which means if I refresh today, I have to wait until 29 days to refresh. It includes everything: configuration, Apex metadata, all user data, records, all the records, and sandbox templates support will be there for full. And history and charter data are optional. We need to select an option if we really need it. And partial data. Partial data is 5 GB of data. So the refresh cycle is 5 days. So the partial data is, what it means is, so Salesforce algorithm, when creates a partial data sandbox, it creates all the objects, and it brings a handful of records into that object. And we are not sure what those handful of records it will pull. It's just based on the algorithm. That's why in partial sandbox, I always have a problem if I have a custom object which has lookups with account and contact and other standard objects. Sometimes it might not find some lookups because it might bring account object record, but it might not bring opportunity record, something like that. So, but still, partial data helps because it will at least bring me some data to start with. Developer Pro. Developer Pro, it includes all, brings all configurations, Apex and metadata and all users, but no data. The difference between partial data and Pro is records are not exist, and sandbox template support will not be available for Pro and developer. So developer Pro is 1 GB of the whole capacity of the sandbox, and the developer will be 200 MB. So if it's a bigger project, I generally pick Pro. If it's a small project or something I just need to verify, I pick developer. And I kind of explain what different sandboxes here, and I am just checking, is there anything specific I missed? What copies? So as I said, this table is also good. The developer sandbox, metadata only, I can refresh every single day, Pro and developer. Cool. And one other thing I want to share is whenever we create a sandbox, all the emails, all the user emails in the sandbox will be appended with the sandbox name. If the sandbox name is test, so username.test, because we cannot have the same username in multiple sandboxes because we are in cloud. I want to quickly ask you guys, anyone have any questions on the sandboxes?
I would just be aware that some of those sandboxes require an extra license. So if you need additional sandboxes, you can purchase those. If you want the full sandbox, you definitely have to pay for that one. I could see that kind of being alluded to as on a question, perhaps. So just be aware of the cost.
Yeah.
The other thing, and I don't know if this would come up at all or not, and I don't even know if they consider it a sandbox, but there is the concept of scratch orgs, which is truly more of your traditional development type environment. It's kind of like it's a temporary sandbox like environment that I can create in and then push my work into perhaps one of these other sandboxes in that application lifecycle that we were just talking about. Again, I'm not totally sure if they use the acronym sandbox for those, but it's somewhat. They don't. What?
No.
Is it just purely scratch org? Is that what they?
Yes.
Okay. And
Yeah, it's not sandbox. Yeah. And I think
so
it comes, the scratch orgs comes with a lifetime, like 3 or 4 days.
Right. They're very.
I think the default is 2 weeks.
2 weeks for
default is
scratch?
2 weeks. Cool.
Yep.
So I, regardless, I correct me if I'm wrong. Scratch org is part of Salesforce DX, and regardless of the organization license, I think we should be able to create scratch orgs for development.
Yes. Yeah.
Yep.
I believe that is true.
Yeah, that's more akin to the ALM that Tyler was talking about. It was actually called out in that diagram that he had. Scratch orgs were listed there.
Oh, good.
So it's good to kind of know what they are and that they're not really part of the sandbox piece of data. I think I remember too from the test, or at least I had done or read somewhere that knowing the capacity of each of these types is good to know. Just knowing that a developer pro is 1 gig and a partial is 5 gig. Like knowing that, it might come up on a test because they might say, what's data? Which kind of sandbox would I use? You know, that sort of stuff. So I think knowing the names of each of them, the interval, refresh intervals, and the capacity is probably really important.
Yeah, this image and also this table are helpful. If you guys want me, I can share this link in the chat.
Yeah, you can also put it in our spreadsheet there too that we have if you want.
Sure,
as a resource.
I will do that. I have access to the spreadsheet.
Yeah,
and
awesome.
I have because the questions mainly on this, so I wrote only one question. We'll go through that question.
Yeah, go ahead. Sure.
Maybe. Can you guys see my screen, or I just shared?
Yeah, we do see the tutorial that you've been on. That's the screen we're seeing.
Okay. I have to share again. Give me a second.
Okay. Yeah, I saw questions for just a second, but then it went back to your original screen.
You should see now. Let me know.
Yep. Good. Very good. Thank you.
So what is the capabilities of Sandbox template? Choose to. Whether it creates a partial copy sandbox from a partial copy sandbox environment, specifies the object whose data should be replicated in a partial copy sandbox environment, specify the data range from data being replicated in a partial copy sandbox, save a template for reuse when creating a partial copy sandbox environment. So basically the question is, what's the use of sandbox templates?
I would say D and B.
Yeah.
Good job, Tanner.
Okay. That's right. I am trying to go to the next slide to show the answers. It's not going.
The suspense is killing me.
But
Yeah.
yeah. Yep. Yeah. So my arrows did not work, so I had to click this. Then it worked.
All good.
Yeah, and Sandbox is straightforward, so I could not find many questions to ask. But as someone else mentioned, those tables are really important. The questions might be around that. The differentiation between different sandboxes.
Yeah, I agree. I think Carly was right on there. Very, very good. Did you
Any-
have other
any-
questions or?
No, I don't have any. Means yep. This is the only one I could.
Okay. All right.
read.
No, that's good. Any questions for Karthik from anybody? Or all right, moving right along. We're doing good on our time. So Scott, I have you up next. Well,
Right.
let's see. You are change sets.
Yeah, I'll pull up my slides. All right, can everyone see that?
Yep.
Great. Okay, change sets. So what are change sets? They're what you use to send customizations from one Salesforce org to another org. So for example, you can create and test a new object in Sandbox, like Karthik talked about, then send it to your production org using a change set. They only contain modifications you can make through the setup menu. And I'll talk about all the different capabilities and customs and considerations when using a change set. When deploying all dependent components, make sure each outbound change set contains all interdependent components that don't exist in the target org. So if you try to deploy a component that refers to another component missing from the target org and from the change set, then deployment will fail. Change sets give you fine-grained control over what you deploy. For example, you can migrate custom fields individually. To deploy a custom object in all of its fields, you must add the custom object in every field to the change set. Adding just the custom object to the change set won't cause deployment to fail, but it results in an empty custom object. You can add permissions and access settings to outbound change sets. Adding profiles or permission sets to outbound change sets allows administrators to migrate permissions for users so they can access whatever functionality you add. There are significant differences between permission sets and profile settings in change sets. You can clone a change set to add dependent components to an uploaded change set. After you upload a change set, you can't change its contents. If you need to add dependent components to a change set you already uploaded, you can clone the change set, add the dependent components, and then upload it again. Make sure to use distinct names for global publisher layouts and Outlook publisher layouts. When you add page layouts to an outbound change set, the type for global publisher layouts and Outlook publisher layouts isn't displayed. So make sure you provide unique names for your global publisher layouts and Outlook publisher layouts so you can differentiate them in an outbound change set. Plan deployments around maintenance schedule. Plan your deployment activities around the maintenance schedule for both your production and Sandbox orgs. Some features require information from your production org when accessed from a Sandbox. Also, the originating org is locked when validating an outbound change set, and the target org is locked while deploying an inbound change set. When change sets lock an org, you can still read and write data to the org, but you can't make any setup changes that would modify the metadata. And validate change sets before deployment. You can perform a test deployment of an inbound change set to view the success or failure messages that would occur with an actual deployment. This is a good idea if you're planning a deployment on a schedule, for example, during low use hours, and wanted to determine if the deployment will succeed ahead of time. But you don't need to perform a test deployment every time you deploy, as this process takes time to complete and the org is locked for the duration. Like I said, you can still read and write data to the org, but you can't make any setup changes. To test deploy an inbound change set, you can click its name and click validate. For change sets, you can view component details. You can view the XML representation of a component after you upload an outbound change set or before you deploy an inbound change set. You are limited to 10,000 files in your change set. If your change set exceeds this limit, you can create separate change sets for email templates or dashboards and reports. These components usually have the most, are the most numerous and have fewer dependencies. And you can delete or rename components using web interface. You can't use change sets to delete or rename components. To delete components, use the web interface on the target org. To rename a component, first delete the component on the target org and then upload the new component in a change set. Then just a couple more things here. Consider possible delays in a deployment time when a change set includes field type changes. If a change set includes changes to custom field types, the deployment time might be delayed by an extended period of time because custom field type changes might require changes in a large number of records. To avoid long delays in deployment, an alternative is to apply the field type change manually after the change set is deployed and plan for tests to run in the target org. When a change set is deployed to a production org, all local Apex tests in that org are run by default if you're deploying any Apex classes or triggers. The target org is a sandbox, tests are automatically run. So you can cut down on time by running a quick deploy, which cuts down on deployment time to production. All right, so that's a lot of different considerations there with change sets. I just tried to run through those pretty quickly. I have a question from Salesforce itself from the study guide, so you know it's good. This is a screen capture, so all fault is with Salesforce if this isn't incorrect in any way. Just want to wash my hands clean. And it even includes universal containers. Okay, so an app builder universal containers has completed all development for a new sales app. The release manager confirms the change set is ready and notices a number of Apex unit tests are included. What is the best way to reduce deployment time to production?
All right, nobody going to
Is
take a
it B?
stab at this one?
Is it B?
Da-da-da-da.
Mhm.
Apex tests are run in production as part of deployment. Executing all tests can be time-consuming and delay your deployment. Use quick deployments to give the ability to deploy and execute specific tests. All right, well, that's it for me. That's all I have.
Oh, just one. All right, very good.
I had
Very
a
good. And
question.
yeah.
It might be just nomenclature stuff, but in this whole presentation, orgs stands for sandboxes, right? You can't do change sets from like my work environment to, let's say, your work, Terry, like different environments altogether.
You can send your change sets from one sandbox to another sandbox. Is that what you're asking?
Well, I'm saying like cross, so I can't send
Oh,
from my
no.
AAA Salesforce to your Salesforce, Terry. Right?
Not with change sets.
Okay. Yeah. Which, yeah, usually those different things I've always referred to as orgs. So when you started saying orgs, I was like, wait, orgs is just sandboxes in this case, right?
Well, you
Okay.
have orgs that are like, you have a production org, you have a sandbox org. So an org is an instance of Salesforce, but you're right, you can't deploy a change set from your org to my org if we're not under the same
Umbrella.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but you're right. Yeah, the nomenclature for org is kind of strange in that regard, but we
You
have
have to
an
use
org
the-
is an instance of Salesforce.
You have to use another terrible process to do that, which I've had to use a lot. If you don't use like a third party thing and you use like ant
Yeah.
deployments, it's a pain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think they would ever allow that, change sets to another Salesforce instance?
I never thought that they would take away URL hacking, and they did, but they've brought it back. I remember talking to somebody about using your URL hacking back when we were in Classic, and I made the comment to them that I can't imagine that this will ever go away because everybody's using it. And literally, like within a month or two, they upset that whole thing. And I thought, well, that'll teach me to never say never. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, you can do it through the other tools, and so whether or not they allow that in a change set, there's probably not a reason to, given the other tools that are out there. But again, you never know.
Yeah, and I wasn't sure if they do that. I've never had or worked at a place that had multiple Salesforce orgs, like Salesforce production orgs. So they have, like, is it connected Salesforce or Salesforce? It's not Salesforce Connect, but Salesforce to Salesforce, maybe that's what it's called.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if that maybe allowed it, but I don't know.
I don't data Salesforce to Salesforce. I don't think you can like set Apex classes and stuff.
Yeah,
okay.
I've always just moved it outside of change sets when I've worked with customers with multiple environments. But
yeah, me too.
Yeah. Very good. Good questions. Any other questions on change sets and deploying with those? All right. Well, Scott, you did a fantastic job as always. And our next one, Matt, you're up with managed and unmanaged packages.
So I went off a slide and I had focused on unmanaged packages. I can do managed packages next week if you want me to.
Well, let's see what you've got and we'll go from there. We can talk to it. And if you are able to do anything with your audio to make it a little easier to hear you, that would be great.
Okay. Part of it was I was leaned way back.
That helped. That helped.
And then I am trying to share my screen now. Share screen. There we go. So do this, and we'll present. So what I'm presenting today are the managed and unmanaged packages, and these tend to be applications that you would tend to find on the App Exchange. The main thing where a test question could come up would be use cases for unmanaged packages. And so with the unmanaged packages, you define a package and what it is used for in Salesforce. They identify the main features of managed and unmanaged packages. So this is, I guess, just kind of the bullet points. How to create and distribute unmanaged packages and describe the use cases of unmanaged packages. More generally, within Salesforce, it's a container for smaller, large pieces of functionality. The packages tend to be created as a group of components, and as said before, they tend to be on the App Exchange. And they tend to be either private to the Salesforce instance, unless they are published on the App Exchange or from a URL. And they can be uninstalled at any point. Unmanaged packages are typically used to distribute open source projects or applications. I had some open source, this definition came up over and over again. It would be one question I would have. I have a list of some of the open source projects that Salesforce is undertaking. I was having troubles finding like an open source app on the App Exchange. One question that I would have for people within the group is, have you seen like an open source instance of an unmanaged package, or within your environments, have you specifically utilized an unmanaged package?
Um, so I'm wondering if what you're seeing is packages that maybe are uploaded to something like GitHub,
Yeah.
and and certainly there's a lot of that. Those are I think I'm correct. This certainly isn't going to be on the exam, but I believe I'm correct in saying that those are packages. Because when you go to install those, they kind of follow they follow the same install process. Um, yeah, right. There's always exceptions, I suppose, um, but you can create packages within your orgs. There is under setup. I think if you just type in packages, I believe you have, and it might be that it's only in Sandboxes. I'm not sure. I have to do some homework on that, but either way, I don't know that it's going to get that deep in with this particular exam. I think if you take like developer 1, you're probably going to have to know this stuff a lot better.
Yes.
But I think you're probably okay just understanding the basic differences between the managed and the unmanaged, and I think you'll be all right.
Yeah, it depends on your definition of open source, truly, because truly open source means everyone's contributing to this one package. But in an unmanaged package scenario, you install it and you have access to view all the Apex classes and change all of those classes. Whereas in a managed package, you can't even see any part of those Apex classes at all.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's open source in the fact that you can change it, but you're not actually contributing back to the main package. And yeah, unmanaged packages you can make in any environment, but managed you have to be in a developer instance altogether, not a developer sandbox.
Correct. That's what I was going to say too. Yep.
Ah, perfect.
Yeah, and like they were saying, with like managed packages, those tend to be what you see on the App Exchange. And they were saying with the unmanaged packages, you're moving components, but they tend to be templates that like a developer can use to add the package to the instance. And it's something, as someone just said, they tend to be, you tend to have access to being able to edit it.
Well, from the developer's standpoint, or the ISV, a managed package allows them to push updates out as well, as opposed. I don't know. Carla, am I saying that right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. A managed package allows the ISV to make changes and push that to all the orgs in which that managed package is installed.
Yeah, and it allows them to track licenses and a variety of different things like that. You were an ISV at one point, so I thought you probably knew that better than I did.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Okay.
There was some considerations when using the unmanaged packages. They should not be used if the code being shared is intended to be intellectual property. They can be distributed by a link, but you don't know necessarily how that's going to be redistributed. And then the namespace of the original publishing is not used within the managed packages, unmanaged packages.
Now, going back to one of the questions, I don't remember if that was Tyler or Tanner, which one of you maybe asked this, but you asked about deploying change sets from one sandbox to one org to another completely separate org. You could do that with a unmanaged package as well. You could create a package, and that package could be deployed in other orgs as well. It's a lot of work, but it's that would be one way to do it.
Yep.
That is a route that we are starting to explore, a hybrid of unmanaged and managed package together.
Yeah. Honestly, I kind of wonder as the whole dev life cycle continues to improve, if that's not how we're going to start to see things evolve more.
Most definitely.
I was looking at you, Carla, hoping that you're
Yeah.
going to jump in there.
That's exactly how it's going to go
Yeah.
with DX and
That's my sense as well.
Yep.
And it makes sense because you can take and uninstall something. It's kind of a way of doing a rollback, sort of, on,
exactly.
you know, some definite advantages to using
Yeah, because
packages.
you can't roll back a change set, you know, or
Right.
easily at all. So very true.
And then the last slide with text is the use cases. And then I can briefly touch upon this one before finishing up with the last slide. This was like some of the open source packages that are within the Salesforce ecosystem. Now, granted, the trouble I don't have a lot of experience with some of these like the open source projects, but these to me would be where you would be seeing a lot of the unmanaged packages. Some specific use cases would be like the application template that I had mentioned before. If you're needing to migrate several different components of your Salesforce instance to another environment, like bundles of different components need to be distributed among customers, but the intellectual property isn't a concern. The source code of an application, and then sets of applications needs to be made available for free via links. So it's you tend to see the unmanaged packages when the customer is needing to see the code or provide the template, but there isn't a concern almost for like the licensing that's associated, or the actual content of the code isn't proprietary information. And so that's with unmanaged packages. I can present next week on managed packages if that would be helpful.
Well, Carl, what would you say are kind of the big differences why would you use a managed package?
So like the managed packages would be what you see on the app exchange.
I think that's the biggest difference.
And it tends to be that you have like an ISV, as you had said earlier, that you're not wanting to provide that code. You're not wanting to, there isn't concern with like the product getting replicated independently of the vendor.
Yeah, so I think control obviously of your source code, that would be a managed package advantage. Is licensing, Carla, can you do that regardless? Or is that managed package only?
A managed package functionality.
Licensing is okay. And the ability to push out changes, I know that's managed.
Yep.
Are there other significant differences with the provide you?
The support that you tend to get with a managed package.
Oh, yes.
With the unmanaged packages, you don't get support.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's true. You can allow somebody to log in as. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, okay, good.
Yep.
The main pain point that I've had with them actually is you can do beta versions of managed packages, but if you install a beta version of a managed package in your org, if you want to update that package, you have to uninstall it, which removes all of the data, and then you have to reinstall it and then do a massive import of all of that data back in.
I forgot about that.
That's a big downfall of that. And it's very hard to find logs in managed packages because you can't actually dive into managed packages to see logs or anything like that. They become increasingly difficult, and you need that support access for people to actually see their logs in your org to troubleshoot.
Yeah, that's true.
Field Service Lightning is a managed package, so I've dealt a lot with pain points and managed package things.
Very good. Very good.
I think the main differences to know for the test is just the fact that that code is hidden. If you have a managed package, that code is all hidden, but if it's unmanaged, it's not. I think knowing that managed packages really originate usually from the app exchange. I think high level differences between unmanaged and managed packages for the test is probably most important to know.
Do
Yeah,
unmanaged
so
packages give the prefix like managed ones do? Because that's one of the
You
key.
can, but it's not
you
required.
can.
Okay, so that's one of the
But
benefits of a managed package, that you're never going to run into a naming convention.
Yep.
Prefixes everything.
It's called a namespace. You have to have a namespace on managed packages. Yep.
I love having Carla here. She knows this. She having worked with an ISV, you know a lot of these details because you've lived and breathed it. It's
Yes,
awesome.
it's been a few years, but that was a former
Yeah.
life.
Yeah. Nothing like having hands-on training to know.
Yep.
Any other questions on that topic? Again, I think Carla's right on. I think we kind of dove into some details there that you probably aren't going to have to know, but it's, it doesn't hurt. I mean, we're hopefully trying to understand Salesforce and how to use it effectively,
Yeah.
as well as trying to get getting certified. So
Yep.
the certification is just proof that you know what you're doing, but hopefully some of this is also helpful, even if it's not on an exam. So I've got the deployment planning is the topic that I had, and honestly, the only thing I found on this that I think maybe they're referencing is really more of the different tools that are available. So that's kind of what I'm going to focus on, and hopefully, and you can tell me if you think I'm missing something, but the developer console is an integrated development environment that we all get with Salesforce. That's a tool that you can use to create, debug, and test applications. It has, in essence, 4 primary features that are part of this. But at the top, underneath my header here, I've got, and on all of the slides, I'm going to give you what its primary use case is. So the developer console it's for development. The different things you can do is debug, troubleshooting. You can view debug logs, which I'm sure you all hate because they're horrible to try to go through. You can view and set checkpoints and Apex code. You're not going to need to know that for this exam. That's pure development. Editing and navigating source code. So if you have an unmanaged package and you want to look at the source code, you can use the developer console to open it up and see what is in those Apex classes and triggers. You can do the same thing with Lightning components and our Visual Force pages. Testing and validating performance is something that the developer console is great at. Again, probably not relevant for this exam, but that is very helpful on Dev 1 if you're going to head that direction. I do like the executing SOCL and SOCL queries because you do have the query editor in the developer console. If you do like to write queries and get information, it's a place to go. The downside of this particular tool for querying is it doesn't give you any help in building the query. So you have to know how to create a query in order to use it here. The other thing that I didn't put here that I just thought about as well is the ability to execute anonymous code. Again, not relevant for this exam, but that's another feature that the developer console provides for us. And then I want to hit on metadata. It was briefly brought up, but I think the rest of the tools, at least several of the tools that I'm going to bring up next, all are built on top of the metadata API. This is for deploying. So when we talked about the ability to push applications from one org to another, it's built on top of metadata API. So it's built to retrieve, deploy, create, update, or delete customizations. So you can create what's called destructive, I forget what it's called now. A destructive change, that's what I want to call it, but I don't think that's the right term.
Oh, I don't know what it's called either off the top of my head.
It won't matter. But with this, you are able to delete um, customizations that were made in an org. So that is done through Metadata API. It's intended for managing customization. It's also, as you'll see with the next slides, it's used to build additional tools to help you with deployment. Visual Studio Code is the next one that I wanted to mention. This is built using the Metadata API. It's for deploying and development. So this is the tool. This is what I use when I'm doing development. I think it's a really nice tool. I'm really excited with what they've done here. But it uses Salesforce extensions. It's using their command line interface. I think it's a great tool. It is built with Visual Studio Code, or it's a part of the Visual Studio Code product line. It's again used to deploy and retrieve information from sandboxes or other development orgs. So back when you were talking about how do I get code from one org to another, I will use this tool to do that. I can pull information from one org, connect to a different org, push it up there. I could also just physically move data from one workspace that I've got to another workspace and push it. It's a pretty simple, easy way to do it. This is also where you can start to bring in that scratch org concept as well.
They also now have SQL auto completion in there as well.
Yeah. It's got a lot of nice features. So if you are interested in development, definitely get your hands on that one. Ant migration was brought up by somebody earlier. I remember hearing. Have you used it?
Yeah, we use it. That's how we do our cross instance deployments, is using it.
Okay. All right. And there you're also using the metadata APIs. And I've never taken the time to really learn this one. I've played around with it, and honestly, it's kind of one of those dev things that just, it's like, man, I don't really want to do this. So, but it's all.
Actually, Carrie.
What's that?
I said I have not done it or used it either. I started.
You haven't? Okay.
No, I started in Eclipse IDE.
Yeah. Yep.
To pull down package XMLs and doing metadata API work in there. But then I switched to Visual Studio Code. I never did AMP migration, so I've actually never used it.
Yeah, it's not terrible. You have this big package XML file.
It's all XML,
and you retrieve it, it pulls it all down, and then you run a deploy, and it'll push it up to the org. But you gotta maintain all of your credentials and stuff, and know credentials for every org, and you got to do them independently. But you have ability to do like quick deploy through it and everything. But yeah, it works and it's free to use. Some of those other ones that talk about cross instance deployments, they have license fees and monthly subscriptions. But yeah, this is totally free to move things between different orgs.
And I've seen people just kind of swear by it who use it and love it, but it's not been, again, this is probably just extra knowledge to be aware of.
Yeah. And
then we've already talked about change sets. Change sets also are using the metadata API. So understanding that this API is out there, a lot of these tools, whether you're buying a tool like Metazoa or whatever, odds are they're leveraging that metadata API that Salesforce has to build their tool on. So this, again, change sets, we've talked thoroughly through that, but it's from sandbox orgs to production or sandbox to sandbox, and it's created within the Salesforce user interface. So no additional tools needed there for your change set, but it is deployment only, not a development tool. And I think that's all I had. All right. So, we got right to the top of the hour. Nice. Okay. I was thinking, I think we've got a lot of time left over, but we don't. All right. So next week, if you didn't see, Carla mentioned to me, Des Moines user group is next Thursday. So we are going to shift our meeting to Wednesday. So I sent out an invite to you. Hopefully you have that. You're welcome to join us at the Des Moines user group. If you log in, it's at the same time period. So if you're curious and you want to jump in, you're welcome to. Next week, we will be going through a Q&A the entire session. And we'll also take time to answer any other questions that you might have. So I do hope that you'll come next week and just kind of go through that process. I'll be spending most of my next week preparing questions for you. So you don't have to come prepared for anything other than I hope you'll come and unmute yourself and answer questions. Other than that, I think we are finished here for today, unless you have any questions.
I just want to add the user group next week. It actually starts at 11.
Yeah, it does start. Yeah, right. Yeah, it does start at 11. But if you came in at noon, you would probably be hitting some pretty good topics by then. So anyway, all right, guys. Thank you very much. We will see you on Wednesday next week.